Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMade.com.
Welcome to our second episode of this awesome podcast with two awesome founders. What we're going to talk about today?
Today, we are going to answer one of the age-old questions that we get asked a lot, that we see asked a ton online, which is how did you get your first 100 customers? And I think this is going to be an interesting one because I suggested this topic to Jeremy here, and Jeremy's response was, I hate that question. I think it's the completely wrong question to be asking. So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on that, on what you think people should be answering, or sorry, should be asking to founders like us. And then I'm also interested to know what your answer to the question that you hate is.
Well, let's start to answer that question. I've done a blog post about it, and I should really have reread the blog post before doing this interview because there is a common bias, whether it's confirmation bias or the time actually just sort of like fit the narrative as you go. So it's nicer to get. So whenever you're asking, that's part of the thing I don't like with this question, is like whenever you're asking a founder that is way beyond the 100 customers, like me, for example, and most likely like you as well, even though it took you a long time to get those 100 customers, if I'm not mistaken, it's still a long time ago. And so by then we first of all forgot about it most of the time. Or it's like we forgot the details, and we have the narrative that fits what we're thinking. And I think that's well, anyway, let's go back to answering the question. So for me, it's super simple. I was in a group called The Foundation. I was learning entrepreneurship. There were 600 people in this group. It started in November 2013. And I was not working on QuickMail at all. I was actually working on trying to get financial planners in Australia to talk to me about an idea that I could be going ahead and building.
Can I just pause
you
there?
Go for it.
Were you targeting Australia specifically because that's the only people you could call at 4 a.m?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And by the way, this is a wrong way of doing it. Honestly, I should have done America because this is where business gets done faster. So definitely the choice of market was probably not the best one.
I think you meant to say the greatest country on earth.
I did not. Anyway, it's Switzerland, of course. That's where I live.
Of course.
Only first. The second one is obviously Japan. For there are some food,
of course,
there are some people,
of course,
and, a great life over there. But anyway, So basically, was in this group, and I felt like there's a problem for me to reach out to schedule those interviews. I had like 2 hours in the morning from 4 to 6. And when you have so little time and time constraints in your business, you don't want to spend half an hour, which is 25% of your time, just purely to reach out to people. So I decided one weekend to just build a quick script because I didn't want to do it during my sort of like business hours. And so on a weekend, I built a quick script, and then there you go, my 30 minutes, 25% of my time gone to just 2 minutes pressing 3 buttons. And that was it. For me, was end of the story. But then what happened next is someone in your forum, actually, I think in your Facebook group at the time, just mentioned like, hey, it's really annoying. It takes me so much time to, get replies. And I just replied like, hey, I solved the problem, happy to show you that. And lots of people raised their interest. I showed them the stuff. And the first question to them was like, well, why don't you sell that? I was like, that's just a few scripts, it was like, who's interested in that?
Yeah. If I remember correctly, didn't someone like send you money when you like hadn't asked for it, and they were like, no, like, I want you to keep supporting this, I want you to treat it like a business, so I'm going to send you something like that, right?
Almost. This is an awesome story. But basically what happened, I just limited to 10 because I really didn't want to support the product. Like, guys, I'm doing it, but my goal is financial planners in Australia. I was super focused, which is one of my strengths. It's like you stay focused on one thing. But in this case, it was like the horse, with the thing around the eyes and not really seeing the opportunity there. So I just say, okay, I'm limiting to 10. I'm going to show you, but I'm not going to support the tool. So you guys can use it and so on. And so I did that webinar sort of thing, like, you know, that's
Yeah.
Zoom call. I think it was on Google at that time. And so, yeah, people say, well, why don't you charge for that? I was like, no one will pay for that. But then I did put like a button, a PayPal button, which you could find like very quickly. I went to PayPal, use my account, and then you can get like a link button that will start a subscription. And I put it on my website for $9. And the next day I had a sale. And I was pissed off at that time. I remember I was like, damn, now I'm gonna have to support this for like $9. Like, come on. And I really, really was annoyed. And I'm like, man, what do I do now? You know, it's like people starting to buy it. And so I send an email to that person and just say, like, why do you pay for it? It's like it's free to access it. Like, I made it free to access, right? Why do you pay? And then it was like pretty much all, you know, bullying him into answering me, you know, kind of thing. And the guy said, well, Jeremy, I'm locking in the price. And I was like,
Nice.
ooh, that's
Yeah,
clever.
I can charge
That's
more.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically it signals that definitely this thing's gonna be, you know, worth much more, you know, in the future. And so I'm looking in the price.
Yeah.
And I thought like, oh, that's a nice thing. So at that point, what I did is like I said, okay, well, let's give it a thought experiment on our Facebook group. I just said like, okay, look, right now this is $9 a month. If you want jump on it, because, you know, by the end of the week I'm going to bump it to $19 a month.
Yeah.
And then just like, you know, it was a floodgate, like lots of people just like, you know, going at it and just starting buying it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I'm going to give it like 1 month trial. Like, you know, let's give it a
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
I just didn't want to refund everyone. It was like such a pain.
All right.
So definitely not the way you know, most people will get their first 10 customers. Although there are some good learning things, but anyway.
Yeah,
What
for
about
sure.
you?
We're gonna have to rename this episode to how Jeremy started Quick Mail and got his first XYZ customers or whatever. Because that's awesome. Like that's a great like great story, and I love hearing that. That's such like a product or like a developer way to start a company of like, I built this cool thing for me, and then like I didn't know what to do with it, and people started sending me money, and it was terrible.
And I
Like,
didn't want other people to use it,
yeah,
which is like
exactly.
funny, right?
It's so funny. How did you go from those initial 10? How did you go from those to 100? Like
So
what
I
changed
think
there?
at that time, so I put it at 19, and then people kept buying. So at that time, I was like, well, that's cool. Let's give it a month. Let's work on it. And so I started working on it, and I think we probably had like 50 users, I would say, at that
Okay.
stage, just like that, which is kind of a big percentage. It's like 10% of the audience, you know, I was targeting at that time. But I wasn't convinced and wasn't fully committed, because it's nice to sell something to your group, but is that your total market, you know, total addressable market? Is that your TAM? Like,
Yeah.
not very exciting for me, right? It doesn't help me waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work on it if this is only for, you know, 50 people.
Yeah.
So I decided to then do cold outreach. So I used my own software to figure
Yeah.
out if this was a need in the market. And so from that point on, then that was pretty easy. That's how I built up, you know, 100 paying customers by just simply reaching out with my software. Because remember, this was a blue ocean at that time. That was like, you know, between marketing automation and sales efficiency or productivity. Then it was a merge of the two. And so people really quickly caught on. It's like, oh, that's a cool software. They like the fact that it automatically send the follow-ups and then stops automatically when people reply. So that's really how I got my next customers to 200, by just doing outreach.
Very cool. Yeah. And one thing I just want to point out there, primarily for the listeners, is that the total addressable market kind of concern, at least in my opinion, is very, very like overrated. That generally what you're looking for is you're looking for early like validation. I think a lot of people do feel the same way that Jeremy did in the beginning, where, you know, he's talking about, you know, how it's like, oh, like it's only like for this group. But the whole thing is that you have to start somewhere, right? And then unless you're getting, you know, Silicon Valley funding or something, there's no expectation for you to jump out to 1,000 or 10,000 users. And even those companies, they don't do it. They still have to go one customer at a time, and then they begin to scale. It's usually just a lot faster. And so I would say that, if you're someone that's listening to this and you're looking for your first 50 or 100 customers, you really want to get those customers in like any way, shape, or form that you can, whether it feels like it's cheating or not. And the main thing that you just want to make sure is you just want to make sure that it's not like your mother paying you to use maid service software when she doesn't even have a maid service, because that's not telling you that the product is actually valuable. But if you're charging real money for it, then anyone that's paying for it is telling you, hey, this is valuable, right? And so like from there, to me, it's like, that's step one. And then step two is what Jeremy did, of stepping outside of that and going, okay, so I've got like, clearly there's value within this group. Now, how do I expand that total addressable market? And like, if at some point you're not able to do that, then maybe you need to rethink stuff. But until you make that effort, I think that it's really, really important to just, to just remember that like that's where everyone starts. Most people's first customers are their friends in one way or another.
You don't know what you don't know at this stage, I think.
Yes.
And a really good article that you may want to read is the Paul Graham famous essay on, do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's absolutely spot on. And
I still do things like that today.
me too, but it's only for fun, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, little things. Yeah, like customer tells you like, they're pregnant or whatever, and like order them something on Amazon, for like $20 or $30. Right? I don't do that very often.
You heard him. If you're a customer of ZenMaid, just pretend you're pregnant.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you want free stuff? you want free stuff?
Free
I'll send you. Yeah,
Nice.
Exactly. I'll send you some baby clothes supporting my favorite football team. Gotta spread the gospel somehow.
So before we go too much into tacticals and lesson learned, how did you get your first 100 customers? It's also a big number. This is another thing I want to say. Like 100 is not 10. It's a big number.
Yeah,
so anyway.
It is, yeah. I'm trying to think how long it must have taken us. I mean, it must have taken us probably 2 years to get to 100 customers, I would think, because we were probably charging around $50 a month. So yeah, it probably took us like 20 to 24 months to get to 100 customers. So you can tell that was a real slow burn. For those of you guys that don't know the ZenMaid story, you can hear that on quite a few other podcasts. But in a nutshell, I was working on it part-time for the first, I think, 2.5 years before I actually went full time on it. Not to make excuses, but it wasn't like that it was our full-time job and we were adding 4 customers a month or whatever. So for us, what's funny is that it was essentially cold email and cold calling. We did not use Jeremy's script or software when that came out, only because when Jeremy was working on QuickMail, because we were following the same process through the foundation of doing cold outreach, I already had a process in place and I had a VA that was doing it for me. So I paid her more money than I would have paid Jeremy to automate it. And at some point we actually did start using QuickMail and she just managed the entire thing with the spreadsheet, but we just already had that handled. So for us, what it was is there were 2 things that took us to 100 customers. So the first thing was cold email and cold calling. I say those 2 together because what our strategy was, and this was a lot about playing to my strengths as a sales guy, plus my experience having run a maid service briefly before starting ZenMaid, is we would send out, I think it was 25 or 50 cold emails every single day via Gmail. And then I was doing the same thing as Jeremy. Jeremy was waking up at 4 a.m. for me. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I would be cold calling people from 5 a.m. until about 7 a.m. And then I would catch the train to work. And the reason that I put those 2 together is because we were very strategic in that I was cold calling people that I had already emailed. So then whenever someone would answer, I'd be like, oh, hey, it's Amar. Is this person available? I sent him an email last week or whatever, which a lot of people, they don't think that oh, that could be a cold email, right? So it's just a little kind of trick that usually makes you more familiar to people on the phone. And even if they answer, you go, hey, it's tomorrow. I sent you an email last week. Did you see that? Right. This is a couple of years ago. This was before Jeremy had flooded the market with cold emails. So it was a lot easier to get in front of people.
No, it's harder.
Yeah. It's much harder. Yeah, it's much harder. And so essentially that's what we did. And that took us, from 0 to 100 really. And then the only thing that we added in there along the way, and I don't want to take any credit for this because it's complete luck, we were trying to just learn more about the industry. And my CTO, I asked him to join a maid service group on LinkedIn, actually, because I was like, hey, you're building the product, I'm talking to all these people, we need to be experts in this industry if we're going to really succeed here long term. So he joins this LinkedIn group. And the admin of that LinkedIn group was a coach of maid services. And she had been working with one of our competitors, and she just hadn't really been happy with kind of the treatment and the communication there. So she saw my co-founder try to join her group. She looked us up, and she picked up the phone, and she called the number that she could find on the site, which was my cell phone. And so I was very confused because she didn't really know like who she was calling.
Called you. Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a reverse cold call strategy.
Yeah, exactly. And so essentially what happened there was she called, and so we had this nice conversation. It's funny because like I didn't like almost hang up on her, but I almost ended the conversation very, very quickly because she interrupted other work that I was doing, and it was clear she didn't really know. Like,
sorry, I'm too busy to do any business. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't know who she was. I didn't understand like the opportunity. Sorry, we've got a really loud boat going by in Thailand right now because I'm like right on the beach here. So essentially
some sound is playing on the side. In fact, he's in his studio.
So essentially what happened was we had a couple of conversations with her, and we demoed the product for her. She gave us like feedback and was like, oh, like this is nice, but it can't be customized like this way or whatever. Nice. And Arun, my co-founder, he pulled an all-nighter after getting that feedback to be able to come back to her the next day with what she had asked for, that we realized this could be like massive for us. And so we got her recommending like our software and everything. And then it was kind of hard to track how much that actually helped us. So that's why I focused on the cold email and the cold calling, because to me, it was like the hustle was the cold email and the cold calling, that we just kept doing the work there. And I knew that if I made more calls, we would get new customers. With her, it was like once we did that sort of initial bit, we could kind of nurture that relationship. But, how much business actually came our way was much more in her hands. And so whenever we're in like that sort of situation, I like to sort of plant as many seeds as possible with as many people as possible that can send us that business. But then I like to focus my time and energy on the kinds of things where I know if I work harder, I'm more successful. And so essentially those were the things that took us to 100 customers.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because most of the developer background type of founders would actually love if someone else does the marketing and the sales for them, so they can just focus on doing the product. And I really love this, this start of thinking like, this is fine, but I don't want someone else to be, holding hostage my growth, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so that's the thing is I've always looked at it as I try to just do as many of those things as possible. So I would never have someone else in charge of doing our sales and marketing. But if other people can contribute to that, then awesome. Course. But the whole thing is like, they're it's like if they not rely on 100%,
it. So yeah,
that's actually a concept that I think we've talked about this before, but it's this concept that I've written about like a little bit. I should probably like write about it a bit more, but it's what I call like one to many selling. And it's slightly different than like maybe influencer or like partner marketing. So a lot of people, if you're listening to this and you have like a B2B SaaS, there may be people in your industry that are famous, right? That everyone knows because they're a big name coach or an author or whatever. And you might be able to get some sort of partnership with them, or partnership implies there's like an exchange of money or something like that, but you might be able to get them like recommending your product, right? And if you can do that, that will really help to get the word out about it. And so that's kind of more traditional like partnership marketing. But the other one that I think that a lot of people maybe like overlook is maybe agency owners that are in your actual industry. So I work with a couple of people that very few people know who they are, but they work with maybe 5 to 10 clients that are our perfect client at a time. And every month, 3 of those people will churn out and 3 more will kind of join like their coaching program, or like, you know,
Yeah.
we'll work with them on like on Facebook ads or whatever. And I've realized that if you get those guys in your corner, then what happens is every single month they'll have 3 new leads that if the person says, I'm not happy with my scheduling software, they may not go like, hey, you have to sign up for ZenMaid, but they'll typically go, hey, you have to try ZenMaid and see if it's right for you. And so that's something that honestly we lucked into. You know, we'll talk about that more on this podcast, but we lucked into a lot of the things that ended up working and being like the big sort of things for us, particularly early on. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, so lots of takeaways here. My my thinking as to why I think this is not necessarily a good question is for a few reasons. The first one
Yeah.
is, like I mentioned, time distortion. Like it's been so long, I don't remember exactly, and then it fits my narrative or what my brain is remembering. It's always much more rosy than what it was at the time, and it's always easy to look smart in hindsight. Like you mentioned, there's another big element which is luck, right?
Mhm.
I've been very lucky with a lot of things. Like people, use QuickMail in their course without even like, asking me. Those sort of thing brings a lot of things. Does that make me any more smarter? Probably not. It's just luck. It's just pure luck, at that time. And the other thing is that people need to play to their strength. Like it's fine, you're saying like, oh, you need, if I'm listening to you, it's like, okay, I'm going to do like, cold calls and so on. But that may not be your channel for what you're trying to sell, right? And the other thing is the channels sometimes are short-lived. Like the market is so much noisier now that some of the techniques, like if you try to redo the Airbnb by just piggybacking on Craigslist, is that gonna work these days? Yes, no. So a lot of things, a lot of time when I hear those answers as to how did you get your 100 first customers, it's a lot of non-repeatable, and I see that as entertainment. It's nice, it's fun, but is that really work for my business? And it runs the risk of doing the next shiny things where people will, oh, I'm gonna try that now because it didn't work my stuff. But in fact, if you stick to your stuff, maybe it will work. It just takes a lot more time. Or if you actually want to really get this and have some meaningful actionable thing, then I would say get someone who just reached 100 customers, right? Not someone who is like 5 million. Like, is that going to play anything if I'm asking, the founder of Slack how he gets his first 100 customers? Like,
Yeah. So
there's a lot of things why I don't really like these questions, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, this is why we're doing the podcast, right? Because I agree with you to a certain extent, and I disagree with you a little bit, like on that.
So we are losing Emma. I don't hear you, Emma, anymore. Where are you?
Oh man, this is gonna be a very short-lived podcast if you do that every time I say I disagree.
Awesome.
So yeah, so I think that yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is that we really want to just kind of caveat the answers, right? I think that that's like probably the biggest thing is I don't think there's anything wrong with asking the question, but I do think that it's important that everyone listening is able to filter the answers and to filter the information that they get, and not just like, well, I mean, like I was going to say, like not only from us, but from everyone, right? That if you're asking someone, yeah, how they got their first 100 customers and they started 20 years ago, I personally still think that there's a lot of value in that answer, but there's not value in that answer if you're asking that person because you're just going to go and do whatever they like did because like it worked for them, right?
Yeah.
Like if anyone could just tell you, this is how I got my first 100 customers, and if you
Cool.
do these
I'm gonna do
exact
it.
things, yeah, then right, then business would be easy, right? So like that's something that I think is really just important to consider. And then the other thing that I was going to say is, yeah, like it should be giving you ideas, but you do have to find your own like path. And then I think where I disagree with you like a little bit there in terms of sticking with kind of like what you're doing. I don't think that there's a problem with shiny object syndrome if you're keeping your focus on the same project. So I have shiny object syndrome within ZenMaid that I always want to try different things. And I think the one big thing is that with what you said, Jeremy, is it kind of makes the assumption that what the person is specifically working on is going to work if they just stick with it. And like sometimes
No,
that's true. And that's a very
not true. That's
difficult
right. Yeah,
balance.
no, that's not true. I think we agree with that. I
Yeah.
guess it's it's a lot of things in our lives is a
Mhm.
balance, right? You can't go
Yeah.
like 100% that way or 100% the other way. So, you know, and so I think that the shiny object syndrome is a problem that you should realize in yourself when you keep on like having tried like 20 different things and none of them work, but it worked for other people. At some point you have to wonder like, am I trying long enough that stuff? Is my
That's a good
focus keep
point.
on moving and
Yeah.
stuff? And I think this is probably the other extreme, kind of, because I mean, I can probably list you like 5, 6 names of people who keeps on changing stuff and still
Mhm.
haven't done anything in the last 7 years, right? They still didn't
Yeah.
do anything. And it's not that what they were doing is wrong. It's just that I think they didn't give it like enough work for luck to strike.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, I think I know a couple of the names. I bet you if we listed off the names blindly, I bet you there'd be a couple of the
There will
same
be
people
some,
that are
yeah,
like, yeah,
some commonalities, yes.
yeah, definitely. But I think that's like one thing that I was saying, because I think that a lot of the people that like I would kind of group into that category, the problem is that they haven't stuck with a single project for long enough. And so to me,
Yes.
it's like, I think that if you're committed to this project, I think it's okay for you to try jumping from like marketing channel to marketing channel. And like, if you realize like, okay, maybe I'm not giving these enough time, no harm, no foul. You can go back and you can try those again. The problem is that if you completely changed projects where you were like, you were in like the dating niche initially, and now you're in like, I don't know, like Twitter marketing or something like that. And then you go, oh, well, like cold email didn't work for the dating niche and Facebook ads didn't
You
work for
change the
like for
audience.
Twitter.
That's a good one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like a big thing. And honestly, Jeremy, I think this is one that really comes down to the like some of like the personality like differences between like you and me, is that because I'm ADD, I have trouble sticking with the same thing. So to me, committing to ZenMaid, but then still being able to kind of get that shiny shiny object syndrome like out by like experimenting and messing with all these different marketing channels. In a lot of ways, I did actually like commit to something for long enough until it was successful, right? Where, we talked about on the last episode that like, you want to sit down for like 4 hours and just get some like deep work done, right? Like you don't want to think about a new strategy, every time you sit down to work. Exactly. Whereas for me, I'm like, ooh, distraction. Nice. It's the complete opposite.
Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. So what kind of actionable advice could we give, to people who are, let's say at different stages, like, I'm just starting, I'm trying to get my first clients. You're probably not going to use the same strategy as I have 10 clients now. How do I get to 20? Right. I think for me, the biggest thing is really to go to the first 10, even like, how do you validate your thing? And another point I wanted to make actually, and then we can come back to this, is that we were very lucky that both of our sort of like strategy were aligned. Like in a sense, the ZenMaid, the maid owners may be receptive to cold call, which is a cool thing because you were comfortable doing cold calls. You know what I mean? It's like if my market required cold calls and your market required like, a good product that works straight away, then it would have been much harder for the both of us to actually come to a point where everything just, works.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're,
okay. Yeah. So I think there's a couple like kind of principles or whatever, that really come into play when you're talking about your first 10 customers. I think that the actual tactics that you use are a lot less important, but I think that the two ways really to get started and to find those first 10 customers or whatever is one, through your personal network, right? So for Jeremy, that was through like a Facebook group. And for you, it may not be a Facebook group. It might be a Slack channel, right? It might show up in a completely different way. It could be an in-person like network that you're a part of, but your personal network in one way or another is going to be one of the places that you can likely find a couple of people. It's interesting that for me with ZenMaid, we didn't have any part of our network. Like we didn't know any other maid service owners. So we went a completely different way.
It could be why it took you longer, right? If you were already in the industry and so on and launched that stuff, you would probably have your audience much more ready.
Yeah, agreed. And then the other thing was that early on, our audience didn't know each other. So we didn't get much word of mouth until we built the community that then got them talking. Whereas for you, you plug directly into a community. So
That's
you
right.
got 5 happy
Supercharge.
customers, and now a bunch of other people like hear about it. So that would be number one. And then the other one would be like outreach or outbound. So if you're trying to get your first 10 customers right now, you can't be not like you can't be, because like you can really do it any way that you want to, but you're going to struggle to get 10 customers in a timely fashion if you try writing long form content or doing SEO, but you don't have any way to get that content or those SEO articles in front of people, right? However you decide to get them in front of people, that's probably what's going to actually get you like the first like 10 customers. And so when you think about it, I mean, with Airbnb, we talked about how like first 100 customers for Airbnb, that's not all that valuable. But I bet if you look at it, I mean, they were going to people's houses in New York City, taking photos for them, right? So that was their own sort of like way of doing outbound or outreach. And so those are probably the first two things that I would be looking at.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about like the story. Like you're absolutely right. They were actually traveling, going to houses and taking picture, but somehow the growth hacking community just remember the piggybacking on the Craigslist. You see what I mean? So there is also a story biased, that you have to be careful
I think
with.
that was how I think they scaled though, right? Because I think that was their big scaling trick, right? I don't think that was really how they grew, but you're right. That is what everyone associates with Airbnb.
That's
but
right.
what's funny is that story that I just said, that's the one that jumps out to me from Paul Graham's essay of the do things that don't scale. Like that was the one where they were in San Francisco, but they'd started
Where are your customers in New York? Well, why are you here then? That was so cool.
Exactly. That was amazing. So I mean, that's a big reason I go back to our industry event every year. It's like I don't get paid for it. We don't actually make any money or make too many sales off of it, but it's where our customers are, and there's so much value in being there. That's a topic for another day, though.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say, if you want to start quick, do you use money as validation, not just like goodwill or like, yeah, that sounds like a cool project. Yeah, I'll definitely buy it. If you just need to build this and this, and oh well, needs change, and yeah, well, later, and then you end up with actually nothing and spend a lot of time. So try to get people locked in the earliest possible. That means like pre-sale. If you manage to pre-sale, you're gonna be good. You're going to be good.
Exactly. And it can be a trivial amount of money, but the act of asking for money will both help you to grow as a founder, but it also makes the person put their money where their mouth is the right phrasing there. But even if you're just
you're eating dollars, that's why you put your
exactly.
mouth where.
Yeah. But I mean, like if you're listening to this and you're thinking about launching like a $5 a month product, and you're like, well, how can I launch that, for like less than like that doesn't make sense. Mailing list but you can also just do like $20 like lifetime, right? So you've got someone that says they're interested, you go, cool, like give me $20 and I'll give you lifetime access for it. It's going to be $5 like a month, right? Person says I'm interested but then won't give you $20. It means that you've got more work to do either on the product or on the sales side.
All right, awesome. I think we'll leave it here. Any final words for listeners?
No, not really. No, just it's been good. Like we say at the end of all of our episodes, all 2 of them. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you want us to chat about, or I think that both Jeremy and I are very, very open books and very very honest with each other, and I think we both call each other out on things when we're not being honest like with ourselves. So anything that listeners want to hear, I think except for some current issues that are going on in our companies might be like off topic, but generally, at least for me, anything that happened more than a month ago, I'm happy to talk about like in detail. So
love it. Okay, cool. People can join us on Twitter if they have any questions or they want to reach us. And Amar, great cast.
Sounds good. See you later.